Welcome. Super excited to be back for another Looking for Work session. Throw a little ticker down at the bottom there. If you have a question, please drop me a question in the comment box and it will shoot it over to me and then I'll take a stab at it, try and answer it. Today, I want to talk a little bit about, kind of tease this, how to make your portfolio pop, sizzle. I don't know, what's another acronym for making it nice? So that ultimately you want to be able to use this as the primary piece of collateral, right? That can reel somebody in, expose them to your skill set, and help you to, get to the next stage. And that might be getting a phone screening, that could be getting an on-site, in-person interview, but really grabbing somebody's attention and letting them know you've got the skills that they're looking for in the open roles and positions they're trying to fill. So that said, I'm going to just jump right in and start kind of covering the things that I think are most interesting. And again, this is from the perspective of hiring manager. So I hire lots of folks. I've been running this apprenticeship program now for a good year. And so I hire lots of folks and ask them to provide a cover letter, to provide links to their LinkedIn. I don't often ask people for their portfolios because a lot of the folks that I'm seeking to help are a little bit earlier on and they have not yet had the training and the skill up necessary. But once they have a year of experience under their belt, then they'll have plenty of work that they should be able to showcase on a professional portfolio. So a couple of things that I'll share right off the bat are that it is much more important for you to focus on the content on your portfolio site than the site itself. So oftentimes people will ask me, do you need to custom build the portfolio site? My response to that is no, not necessarily. In fact, in many cases, it might be best for you to just use a very pedestrian, run-of-the-mill web hosting platform site and get focused first and foremost on getting your content up there. Now, it just might so happen that you are a front-end developer that's really interested in working in, sites that have beautiful fit and finish. And that might be kind of hard to do with some of the tools that are out there. But I'll give you one that can kind of balance both the ability for you to be custom, flexible, for it to load fast, and for it to be reasonable for you to host, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And that's Webflow. So you might want to look at Webflow. Webflow would be one of the top alternatives that I would say is like a hosting platform / content management system that you might want to use for your portfolio site. And that'll get you to the point where you can just kind of have something up and start really featuring your work. That said, if you are looking for more of a full stack role, looking for a back-end role, if you're looking for a data engineering role, then really what you need to showcase is your work itself. And you don't need to, hey Jet, you don't need to necessarily spend a whole lot of time on the fit and finish, on the look. One of my favorite portfolio sites of all time. Let me see if I can bring this up here. How do I share my? I'm going to share my screen. Just move all this stuff out of the way here for just a second, because that's not going to be super interesting to you folks. But all right, one of my favorite websites for a developer website. This is a developer's developer, right? This is a front-end master. This is, you and I both know and love this individual. His name is Kyle Simpson. He also goes by Github. So this is what Kyle's portfolio page looks like. And he's like an award-winning, I don't know if he's award-winning, but he's an author, spoken at lots and lots of conferences, the author of You Don't Know JS. So this, as you can see, is really a focal point to here's content, right? Content is the king. And this is the purest form of just a website with a bunch of content on it in ways that you can support Kyle in the work that he's doing. Rob Rich. And again, super simple, but he's known as a prolific trainer, speaker, conference speaker. Got all the key ways to get a hold of him. You got his presentations. Again, this is just, I think, classic developer's portfolio. Now, that said, if you're a front-end developer, then you might need something a little fancier. And so now you're looking at, go to a place like the awards website and take a look at some of the other types of things that front-end designers / developers are doing, and maybe model your user interface for something that's custom, bespoke, that can really showcase, all the parallax and fancy, more organic looking designs, etc. So it's really going to depend largely on whether or not you think this is going to best showcase the type of work that you do, or you think it's better to just highlight as a developer, these are the kinds of things that you're working on. These are the kinds of resources. And this is amazing content, right? You can see all of the different places that he's spoken at or talked at, and all the slides here. Super easy for you to go back, and if you're at one of his sessions, find his content via his portfolio page. So I love it. I'm in love with Rob Rich's website. Jet asked the question, critical to have a portfolio if you're promoting your digital products. LinkedIn, provide live links, projects. So I wouldn't say it's critical unless you're, job searching. And then if you're job searching, I'd say, yes, it's absolutely essential. I'd say if you've got job search is what you're working on, this is your day-to-day at this point, then I would say you need to have the ability for you to storytell and share what your skill set is. And so I think portfolio with projects is just as important to your capacity to help people understand what your skill set is as your resume. So if you got a resume, but you don't have the project in portfolio site, it's an essential piece. That's why I say those 4 elements are going to be what you need before you actually strike it out and start reaching out to folks and networking with folks. You want to have your resume, your LinkedIn, your portfolio site, and your GitHub, all 4 of those pieces ready to go. Again, if you're job searching. If you're not job searching, then totally understand, right, that you don't have all of those pieces 100% always up to date, up to snuff. But if you're job searching, got to be there. 1,000%. I think it's critical. So one of the most common questions I get is, does it have to be custom? And again, I don't think it needs to be custom. I think the mistake a lot of developers make, especially those that are not looking for a front end or full stack position, but are really more back end developers, they're really about the nuts and bolts of building APIs and all the magic that goes on behind the scenes with data engineering. So if that's what your background, then by all means, please don't think that you're going to do a tutorial on Redux and then you're going to build a front end website. You're going to use that as your portfolio site. Not a great idea. In fact, terrible waste of your time. Throw a site up on Webflow, use a template, make it look nice, and then feature your work. That's the best use of your time. And again, I don't think it's a great reason to pick up a new language or framework. And you're like, I'd love to use Meteor, so I'm going to build my portfolio site Meteor. Not, I repeat, a good idea. Don't use it as an opportunity to learn something new. Use technology that you've already used and you're familiar with. And if that means it's jQuery and PHP, use jQuery and PHP. Keep it dead simple, because unless you're really showcasing that front end, that fit and finish for a front end, really designer-centered UI, UX type developer role, you're probably better off really focusing on the content that you're putting on the site. Yeah, Nick, 100% agree. Got to be able to show your projects, got to be able to walk through technologies that you're using. All that good stuff is the key to making that conversation at an interview go way easier. The good portfolio site should be something you can pull up during an interview, and you can use it to kind of speak through your experience and filibuster. Spend a little bit of time running through some projects. So it should be kind of like a portal or a gateway into your work. Should include a place where they can download your resume just in case they lost it, right? Quick and convenient way for them to get a hold of your resume again. Should be a jumping off point for them to find your GitHub. And again, use it as a resource to be able to shoot people into your LinkedIn profiles, your other social media, etc. So, Jet asks, I know the webinar is about GitHub account, but permitting in the end, is there some way we could organize cleanup? Absolutely. More than happy. In fact, let me just kind of cover a couple of things. So if you have a portfolio that has lots and lots of stuff in it and you're looking to make it more presentable, the first thing to keep in mind is that the natural order of the way things are displayed, and I don't know if they've added any features to enhance this, is typically how recent the projects are. So if you touch something recently, then it bubbles up towards the top, and so it's one of those ones people will find more easily. So the first thing I usually do is hide or make private repos that are like not super helpful for the general public. They're not open source, or not things that people are going to want to try and find and contribute to. In many cases, I used to be like a collector of repositories. Instead of starring them, I'd be like, let me go ahead and just fork it. So I forked lots of repos. I haven't forked as many recently. I just haven't been writing as much code recently. So if you have that situation where you have lots of stale old stuff, the good news is it's already naturally buried at the bottom unless you touch it and you change something. But I would just make sure the most recent things that you're working on have README documents. Try and take advantage of maybe the wiki functionality to add some additional context there if that's helpful for your projects. Try and, if it's an open source, do all of the extra little things that make it easier for people to contribute. And then I think it actually helps to show some of your previous history. So a lot of people have a lot of their private work that you don't see on GitHub. It's not showcased in like the frequency of your commits, and like the colors would show how many changes were made in each of the commits. So that little consistency chart there, you have to go into the settings and actually enable it to track private repositories. It doesn't expose them to the public, but it does allow your company contributions, and a lot of the other orgs that you might be part of to also kind of show up and integrate together, so that you're not just showing your public work, but you're also getting to show how frequently you're committing to all of your repositories over time. And I find that super helpful when I'm looking at someone's GitHub, because it will show me, I see a very common pattern, and this is one that you don't want to emulate, but if you're a student at a coding bootcamp, I see a big swath of green, and you can kind of see this zone of green, and then you just see it like disappear, and then you just see whiteness all the way up until recently. And that tells me that that individual was committing code during the bootcamp, and then as soon as the bootcamp was over, they stopped committing code, which is an indicator that they also probably stopped writing code, which is terrible, right? And then they will sometimes say, yeah, but I was taking courses and I was watching videos, and I was like, yeah, but you're not committing code. And like, that's the daily habit that you should be doing. So I'd say you want to avoid that and do the opposite, which is I wouldn't worry so much about cleaning it up, other than, like I said, maybe making some repos private. If there's just not a lot of value for people, you're not expecting them to contribute. It's not a lot of your own custom code if it's forked, and really make your recent work shine. There's some badges on there, shows you've got continuous integration going and the builds are working, like those kinds of things. Probably don't have to go all out and add like Greenkeeper and things that are going to tell you when things are dependencies need to be updated. But it'd be nice to be able to show that you are at least throwing some really solid readmes and badges and things like that. So hopefully that helps, Jet. So Nick says it's like name dropping people, real world. Keywords are huge. Yeah, absolutely. So rather than having those blocks where you say, like, I'm beginner at HTML and advanced at CSS, what I like to see is use each of those tags with your actual project, so that you can then be able to say, oh, I want to see this person's, front-end UI skills. So let me look for a project where they've called out their CSS and their HTML. You can go to that project and like take a peek, see. Because a lot of times what I want to do is just validate by using the portfolio what kind of experience this person has and what they can demonstrate of their particular skill set. Matthew asks, I have a bunch of small little projects, things are learning like parallax, shopping cart, keyframes. would those be something you'd highlight in your portfolio? Absolutely. So you want to show, in the way that I would usually organize a portfolio site would be, I would, again, maybe group them by, here are some front-end projects where you're, showcasing your front-end abilities. Here are some projects where you're showcasing your ability to use a library or a framework, right? Like, hey, I've done 4 or 5 projects using Django, or I've done these projects that are helping me to understand GraphQL and NoSQL databases, right? With each one, you might want to include picture of the application, so picture of the UI if it's important. If it's a database, then maybe the entity relational diagram, so just a screenshot of the ERD. And then a little narrative. What is the project about? Why is this interesting, right? What is the piece that's important? The tech used, the business problem that you're trying to solve. And then again, maybe that little list of the types of technologies that you're using in the project, and then a link to the GitHub and a link to the live application. If you can encompass that, and even if they're small projects and they're just showing 1 or 2 things, then you're good to go. So yeah, I would agree. It does hurt. So to Nick's point, it never hurts to show things that you've built, as long as what you're building, you're putting up there is quality work. So if it's not quality work and it's just like a toy and it's broken, then I would say leave that off. That said, make sure everything that you're working on in your passion projects is up to the best standards that you are capable of, right? So that means linting your code. For the love of God, lint your code, right? So that you got semicolons where they need to be. You've got the tabs and spaces set to whatever the consistent standard is that you're using. Don't use prettier. That's one of the most annoying things inside of a professional shop. Folks that will just run prettier on files, because it may result in a bunch of spaces and tabs being adjusted in files, and it looks like there's a much bigger change than the reality, which is like, oh, it's just like you just reformatted some things in a whole file because you opened it up to change one line and then reformatted the whole file. So get in the habit of, as you're coding, especially early on in your career, making sure that you are sort of manually linting your code. As you write code, make sure it's indented correctly, make sure that you're following the code conventions so that you don't have to use those tools. And the only time I ever use those tools myself is when you have a piece of code that's like, maybe it's completely minified and you need to break it back out and make it somewhat readable. Or if it's somehow been mangled, then you want to kind of get it unmangled. But generally speaking, when I write code, you should just be able to lint it and find like, oh, I missed a semicolon right there. Go in, fix it, you're good to go. So it does hurt to show a ton of bad, inconsistency, low quality stuff. So just make sure everything that you're publishing is in great shape, even if it's small. You are more than welcome, Jet. Matt asks, how important is a README on your GitHub projects? I would say critical. And I think more important than just having a poorly formatted README is have a README that's formatted. So make sure you're using the markdown syntax so that you can have like headings and paragraphs in unordered lists. The information that I look for typically when I go into a project is like, what kind of technology is it? Sometimes you can tell that by GitHub. GitHub will say this is a JavaScript project or this is a TypeScript project. I want to know, how do I build the project? How do I run the project? How do I run the tests, right? So that's what your README should contain. I can't tell you the number of times that I see projects that have a README, but it doesn't even contain like, what does this do? What is this thing? Is this a full stack application? Is this a web app? Is this a progressive web app? Does this rely on anything? Does it have any dependencies? Like, this is the front end and there's another repository that has the back end. Or this relies on a paid service that you need to be able to like sign up and add your key to, right? Super annoying. So those are the kinds of things I think, not just having a README, but having that information available is super important. Yes, quality work. Always just show your best work, for sure. So a few things to avoid, and I'm more than happy to answer additional questions as they come through. things that I say are like big things to kind of look out for that I see a lot with folks that are, early career. This is, their first type of like online portfolio they're putting together is broken images. Broken images. Got to make sure you rip through every link in the site. Make sure you don't have any broken images. Common cause of broken images could be you're moving the site. So you're moving it from local, you're getting it up and deployed. May result in maybe the URLs getting mangled a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're going in there, clicking through all the pages. I know it seems like very intuitive, but I can't tell you the number of times people push work up and then be like, peace. They fire off links. So make sure. And then the other piece that you can do to validate that is, and this is a game changer. Even when you're at home, the easiest way for you to cache bust and make sure that you're getting the latest version of the website is pull out your mobile phone, turn off the Wi-Fi on your phone, and then hit your website using your phone, because your phone is going to ping off of a local cell tower and do a fresh pull, in most cases, of the content for your website, and then check and see, do you have any broken images? Everything might be fine because it's been cached, but on your phone, you can very quickly, coming in from a different place, almost like using a proxy, you're coming from a different IP address and a different browser, and hopefully that different route to your end server will help you identify this is how most people are going to probably view it. It's also likely that most people are going to be viewing things on a mobile device, so it's a good form factor to test and see. Mobile first, is it going to display well on a mobile device? Does it at least gracefully degrade? If you don't expect people to be looking at your site on a mobile device, gracefully degrade it to the point where they can at least use the site somewhat, right? And they can kind of get around, even though it's not the best experience. Don't show one of those messages. This site is best viewed on a mobile device or a desktop device, and then don't show them anything. Not a good idea. Well, cute, not a good idea though. So next is a great way around broken images, stock photos, save them to your Google Drive. Yeah, having some fallback images would be great. 404 page. So to Nick's point, when you think that you've got all the bases covered, some knucklehead on the internet is going to type something on the end of the URL and it's going to break your site, unless you have, when you're setting up your web server, you have designated this is your 404 page. When they cannot find a resource, this is what it should show. And that could be a great place for you to, throw a little Easter egg, something special for folks. I've seen lots of ways people try and be lighthearted or a comedy on their 404 pages, but don't leave that off. And in many cases, if you're using a framework or a library, it will have a default 404 page for you, which is great. It's still better than someone just getting a browser error and the browser is just like, can't find this page. You get a little 404. That's not good. You got to cover that base for sure. Warn people if your apps require warm up. What I mean by that is if you're hosting maybe on like a free Heroku instance or other resources that, since your apps are being hosted on a free or free tier service, they might go to sleep. And so when someone clicks on your live application, they are going to expect that it loads nearly instantaneously. If you know that there will be a slight delay, then let the person know, right? So when they click on it, maybe you spawn a modal window and you tell the person, this website is hosted on a Heroku dyno and it will go to sleep. So you might need to click on it and then wait a little while and refresh your browser and then the app will load, right? But like walk someone through. Don't make the assumption that they're going to put those pieces together because they might not be familiar with that. They might be using a whole bunch of different tools and not realize that your site is hosted somewhere, or it might take a little while to respond. It will also help people to avoid thinking your site is broken when they click on it and then they just keep hitting refresh because it's not loading. And they're thinking, what do you got going on here, right? So if you have your project, so this is on your portfolio, some of your projects that load and take a little while to load because you're using freer tiers and resources, let folks know that. If your apps are taking a long time to load because they're not built very well, then fix that. optimize the app so that it will load correctly. I like to see code. So as much as possible, things that I would suggest you avoid include not giving me a quick and easy way to get to the code. It's great that you've got this well-polished project that I can look at and maybe touch and play with, but I am also eager to see what the code looks like. So make it easy. Send me a link to the repository so that I can look at the code and examine how did you go about building it. If it is private, the thing that I would avoid in that scenario is saying, hey, I worked on this cool project, but I can't tell you anything about it. It's like this, top secret government thing. Instead, explicitly ask and get permission to share some aspects of the project. It might be fine. They might say, well, you can share a few screenshots. Just let us take a look at the screenshots first, and we'll let you we'll approve them, and then you can post them on your portfolio site. They might say you can, but you need to password protect them so that someone needs to have a password in order for them to be able to view some of the screenshots. But again, the key is to ask permission if it is something that's like proprietary and that you're under an NDA to not disclose. But the easiest way to get sort of the way to expose it on your portfolio is to see if you can show screens or see if you can show a screen recording and show a walkthrough of maybe a flow that you built or something kind of cool animation or some other feature that otherwise you wouldn't have a great way to be able to demo to the public. And then finally, again, I mentioned earlier, really talking about the business case. So don't ignore that piece. Don't just have a picture in a label for the project and then they click on the project and they have to kind of like self-navigate and figure out what the thing is. Really take the time to make sure that there is some text that goes along with each one that describes what's the use case, what technology do you use, why you chose to work on this particular problem, you've put some thought into it, right? That this isn't just something that you like randomly picked a YouTube video and just like did a video walkthrough and then committed the code and pushed it up to the repository and launched the app, right? That's it. Those are I think the easiest way to make your portfolio sizzle is to just keep it simple, right? If you're doing something that's a little bit more, front end, fit and finish focused, you can make it look super nice. So you might want to ask a designer friend of yours, if you don't have the design chops, to design something for you and hand it off that you can then do a pixel perfect slicing of that template and then put the rest of your content on there, make the rest of the content super nice. Then you do all the fancy parallax scrolling and animations and all kinds of CSS tricks. But first things first, got to get that content. So that means you're going to be working on passion projects. The whole point is to have projects, and those again should be super small, so that you can put pretty good quantity, good volume on the website. Nick asks, do I suggest making portfolio site on site a one pager? Is it okay to include multiple pages? Sure. I think it's fine. If you've got a good way for you to sort of separate the content out, maybe show these are, one domain or one skill set that you have versus another, or it could be industry specific. So if you're trying to get into a very specific industry, like gaming industry, then you might need to have some separate pages that just talk about maybe some of your Unity projects versus some of your WebGL. Like you might have a variety of that. Any specific tools for creating video walkthroughs on Windows? Good question. I know a lot of people use Loom. I'm okay with it. I think Loom's cool. What's another tool that I like? I actually like, there's something called WeVideo. I think it's fairly inexpensive too for an individual. And WeVideo has the ability to record your desktop. And it's also like a full editing, like all in the browser. So one of the things I hate is the amount of size and bloat that it takes to record and edit videos. So WeVideo does all of that in the cloud. So you might want to check out WeVideo. Is like not just a way to screen record, but you can kind of touch it up and edit it just a little bit. You can also go super, it's kind of like a hack, and that is YouTube. So you could start a YouTube channel. I think you have to have a channel. So you get a YouTube account, start a channel, and then you can record your screen to YouTube, and then you can edit and decide when you want to make those public. So that could be like the easiest way that you could create a walkthrough would be go into YouTube, record your screen. There's a ton of other ones too. I've used Camtasia in the past. I've used, there's one that they made that was just the video portion called Zing. I think the one I see the most often these days, though, is Loom, Loom. I think it's cool. You put your little face on the camera while the rest of you're showing the screen. It's kind of be cool. What else? Any other questions? I feel like I ripped through that, but hopefully it was helpful for folks. And we do this every week. So if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch or Twitter, I still don't know how the whole video streaming thing on Twitter works, but apparently you can stream to Twitter. So I'm doing it. And we'll do this every week. So every week I'm really focused on creating opportunities for people that are looking for work to narrow that gap between where they currently are and that first opportunity. Because once you get your first engineering gig, once you get your first job doing data engineering, software engineering, it's all downhill. You should not have to worry about a job probably for the rest of your life. At least now. For my life and my kids' life, we're not going to have any shortage of need for software engineers. So you got to get that first one, because once you've gotten the first one, it's really easy for you to have a lot more experience, credibility, and the ability for you to really leverage your learning from that previous opportunity for whatever the next thing is in your career. So I would say for those people, I hear it all the time that say, well, how do I get a job without experience? And how do I get experience without a job? Then you need to remember it doesn't cost you anything to write a line of code. It's not like if you want to become really good at making furniture, you got to buy a lot of wood. You need to buy a lot of glue and screws and varnish and all of the things that are required to like the materials. There's no material cost to like writing software. So you got to consider your time, but build lots of stuff, build lots of projects, and you'll build up not only your skill, but you'll build up a cache of all these things you can put on your portfolio. And then you can showcase to show you are capable of doing this job. So don't let the fact that you're not getting paid hinder you from making progress, because there's plenty of opportunity for you to come up with things that you're passionate about, that you're interested in, learn, and then leverage building projects to gain that not just experience for yourself, but the ability to translate and show what you've learned and how you've applied it to real world problems. So Matthew asked, when looking for a job, if I'm junior, should I stick to applying to junior dev jobs or any dev jobs? The general rule of thumb I think a lot of people put is like, I would take the amount of experience that they ask for and cut that about in half and say, if you've got close to that, then you should be within the ballpark. That means if they're asking for 2 to 3 years of experience and you have 1 year of experience, you're probably still going to be able to be a competitive candidate for that role. If they're asking for 10 years experience and you've got 1, it's not likely. And then the other piece is like, even if they gave you a chance and they said, okay, we'll hire you, you are asking for something where we think 10 years of experience is what's needed, you're going to be so buried and unable to really contribute and feel comfortable in that role that it's not really going to make sense. So the gut check you should have is, when you think about this, applying for junior dev jobs or any dev jobs, it should be applying for roles where you feel like it's maybe going to be a little bit of a stretch of your skill set, but not completely out of your wheelhouse, where you're just going to be blown out of the water and you are going to get fired. So even if someone says, I want to give you a shot, if their expectation is that you're going to come in, you're going to start crushing it, and you're going to be pushing out a lot of code and solving really massive, gnarly challenges, it's going to be really hard. Don't set yourself up for that. So use that as a gauge when you look at the job. Do you feel like in 6 months you're going to be taken to it like a duck to water? Or do you feel like you're going to be burning the midnight oil every night trying to get your work done after hours and weekends and like not really being able to kind of grow and feel comfortable? And if you feel like it's a stretch, then focus on jobs where you have more of those skills, that it should be a more comfortable place for you to get in, learn the code base, contribute to the business, and grow your skill set over time. So hopefully that helps. It's hard, it's subjective. But always remember that when someone puts out a job posting, it's a wish list. They're wishing and hoping that someone meets all of those things and checks all the boxes and is a good person and will be a great employee. They're hoping for all those things. Are they going to get them all? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they have to compromise and find a situation where they have to invest a little bit more in helping someone get to where they want the person to be. And that's usually where a lot of people start earlier on in their career. Someone's taking a chance. Someone knows this is going to be a stretch and you're going to need some time to grow into the position, but they're willing to invest and give you that time. And those are great places. And that's where most people get started. You get your first gig. And from there, you want to really keep your foot on the gas and keep learning and constantly getting better at your skill, at your craft, spending the weekends, spending the evenings. Keep showing up to the meetups, give talks at the meetups so that you are constantly growing and getting better and you don't like immediately stagnate. See, a lot of people do that. Come in the first couple of years, they're super excited. They got that glow. They want to touch everything. They're volunteering for everything. And then it kind of tapers off with some folks. And you can tell really quickly, like, oh, this person's going to have a really hard time getting to senior software engineer and will maybe never become a principal software engineer or a leader inside organizations. But that's okay. Like maybe your thing is like just doing something else. Like I like riding my bike, playing the drums, surfing, whatever it is. And so it's fine to have a job where you just come in and you just bang out code and you do a great job helping the business, but it's not really what you're passionate about. And that's perfectly fine. I don't think you have to like love to code. You have to eat, sleep, and breathe code in order for you to be successful and have a great career. But it is something that you're gonna early on need to do quite a heavy volume of to get good at. So if you don't like it, then it's gonna be tough. You don't have to love it, but if you don't like it, it's gonna be really, really hard. All right. If there are any other questions, happy to hang here, answer some more questions. If not, peace out and eat lunch. I think we're having McDonald's. It's not the healthiest choice, I know, but it's the choice I've made today. Oh, it is the choice we have made today. All right. I will see everybody next week. I'll post another one of these, the links, in the next day or so. And yeah, we'll do this again on Tuesday. In between then, make sure you're applying for those jobs. Check out my previous I think there's a ton on YouTube. So check out the YouTube posting, subscribe and like so that this will spread and become like super viral. And then we can help hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of the hundreds of thousands of people prepare for and then land great jobs. So that's the goal. It's really that easy. All right. Later.